Lincoln University, and then that night we'll attend the world premiere of James Napier Robertson and Paula Whetu-Jones' new film, Whine, the story of Dame Whine Cooper. On Thursday, I'm in Auckland, where I'll visit the St John Ambulance Communications Centre, do a walkthrough of the city rail link tunnels and speak to the Howard League celebration of assisting 12,000 people to get their driver's licence. On Saturday, I'll be in Queenstown to mark the start of the ski season. Today, I am announcing changes to our cabinet lineup, triggered by 2 departures. Minister Chris Hipkins has decided to leave Parliament to spend some time with his family as his youngest son starts school. This was a decision Chris expressed to me at the election. In fact, he had intended to leave 18 months ago, but I asked him to give us another year. I'm grateful for the significant work he's undertaken so far this term in resetting our immigration and public broadcasting settings. His contribution as a minister has been hugely valuable. He goes with the love and thanks of his colleagues for his contribution over many years, and he will be greatly missed. But I know we can never miss him as much as his family already has. And I thank him for the gift of his time. I'm also announcing that Trevor Mallard will step down as Speaker in mid-August as he prepares to take up a diplomatic post in Europe. Trevor has been an MP for 35 years and has held 13 different ministerial portfolios across his career, including education, Labour and the Rugby World Cup. He has been Speaker for 5 years and is currently the grandfather of the House. After the 2020 election, Trevor told me he wanted to transition out of the role of Speaker over the course of this term to allow someone else the opportunity and to take on new challenges himself. He's worked closely with Adrian Rurafi as Deputy Speaker for that purpose, and we will be nominating Adrian to replace him in this role. We'll have more to say on the diplomatic posting in coming months once the normal processes are finalised, but it will be befitting of Trevor's skills and interests, and will make him the 3rd of our 5 most recent speakers to represent New Zealand abroad. Dan Rosewarne and Soraya Peki-Mason will replace Chris and Trevor from the Labour list. While these are 2 significant departures, it also provides an opportunity to give newer ministers greater responsibility and to bring new members onto the team. In this regard, I'm promoting Kitty Allen into the Justice portfolio, and she also picks up a new Associate Finance role. Kitty is a very capable minister who has performed well in the portfolios given to her so far. She has a big future in front of her, in my view, and this portfolio allocation is a sign of my confidence in her. Also taking on greater responsibilities will be Michael Wood, who takes on immigration, which fits with his workplace relations portfolio and the government's focus on skills as part of our immigration reset and COVID economic recovery. Michael was also a very talented minister. And Willie Jackson now picks up the overall broadcasting portfolio, which he comes to with extensive sector knowledge and experience. I've also made the decision to move Priyanka Radhakrishnan into Cabinet, retaining all her current portfolios and picking up associate workplace relations with a focus on migrant exploitation. Since becoming a minister outside of Cabinet in 2020, she's overseen the establishment of a new Ministry for Ethnic Communities and worked on complex issues like foreign interference and social cohesion. Labour Whip Kieran McAnulty becomes a minister outside of Cabinet, with a specific focus on regional issues. He will have an associate transport delegation on regional transport and will be the associate local government minister as well. He also picks up emergency management. He will also take on the racing portfolio and use his past whip skills as Deputy Leader of the House, freeing up Minister Wood. Duncan Webb replaces Kieran as Labour Chief Whip, with Barbara Edmonds and Willow Jean Prime joined as junior whips by Tangi Utikere. It is also our intention to nominate Barbara Edmonds to chair the important select committee that is Finance and Expenditure. I've also made the decision to change Puta Williams out of her police portfolio. Portal and I share a view that at this time it's critical that our focus and time is on supporting the police, implementing our record investment in the front line, passing our further gun law reforms, and developing additional measures to deal with the current escalation in gang tensions and violence. That focus currently has been lost. Portal is a capable minister and retains my confidence. That's why she is still in Cabinet. But change is required. Portal picks up conservation and disability issues, where there is a significant work program following the establishment of a new ministry. Portal has a background in the community sector and was also a member of the parliamentary group championing accessibility legislation. Chris Hipkins takes over as Minister of Police. He has a degree in criminology and a long interest in working in youth justice issues, which dovetails into his education work. Along with the Minister for Social Development and Employment, he will co-lead a youth justice ministerial team to focus on the drivers of the spike we've seen in some parts of youth offending recently. Minister Hipkins is excited about this new challenge, and I have a high level of confidence he will provide the reset necessary in this portfolio, one where we do have more work to do. To free him up for this area of government focus, a significant part of his education portfolio will move to Jan Tinetti, who has played an excellent role as Associate Education, where she brings decades of experience as a teacher and a school principal. And Dr. Aisha Vera will pick up the responsibility for our ongoing COVID-19 response. She also picks up research, science and innovation. Mika Whaitiri picks up food safety from Minister Vera, and that will fit with her primary sector work. One further change is housing, where I'm bringing in public housing, building and construction under Megan Woods. This government has overseen the largest public house build in decades, as well as record numbers of housing consents. But there is more to do, and focusing Megan on this important ongoing work is one of our focuses. To conclude, a nod to the future. These changes are an acknowledgement of our two departing colleagues, who I'll have more to say on in time, but they're also a nod to the future. I take the job of balancing new talent with experience really seriously. We are, however, only 18 months into our term. That's why it's my intention at the beginning of 2023 to look to a more comprehensive review of our lineup with a constant eye to the future. Till then, my thanks to Chris and Trevor, and a warm welcome to Priyanka and Kieran. Yeah, Mikey.
Trevor Mallard has been under immense pressure. How much of that played a part in this decision?
As you can see from the words that I've shared today, back at the time of the election, Speaker Trevor Mallard indicated to me that it was his intention over the course of this term to move someone else into the role. And he's not alone in that speakers often in their second term have tended to undertake that succession plan. No. Look, every speaker in their time in this incredibly difficult and highly political role has at times faced points of pressure or disgruntlement from the opposition. That is part and parcel of the role. Trevor's had a very hard job, exacerbated by some issues that no other speaker has faced. That is not the cause of his departure. He determined at the time of the election that this would be the term in which he would depart. And for those who have observed him closely, you will have seen him very deliberately moving Adrian Lurafi into the role.
Prime Minister, is this a minor reshuffle?
Well, it's triggered by two departures. And as you can see, even with just two departures, the knock-on effect of reallocating portfolios can give the appearance of quite a bit of movement. But no, I don't consider this to be an overwhelming reshuffle in the sense that, by and large, you still have many ministers retaining their portfolios. And that's for the fact that I do think it's important to give consistency and time. Some ministers have only been in their roles for 18 months. You do want to give a bit of stability and the ability for those ministers to deliver in their roles. But I have indicated at the beginning of 2023, I will be looking again.
Are you sure that Chris Hipkins...
Look.
Obviously, with Willie Jackson taking over broadcasting, can we expect a change of direction with the TVNZ, RNZ, need a fish or fowl merger?
And here I want to put in my word of thanks to Minister Farfoy. He's done a huge amount of work in the public broadcasting space at a time when we have wanted to see greater investment in public broadcasting. That agenda continues. That agenda has already been set. So what we're looking to is a minister who's got expertise in the area to continue on with that reform program.
Are we expecting
See it as a
any
continuation.
changes or a continuation?
Yeah, continuation. And the reason for that is because, of course, Minister Jackson has been a member of the Cabinet that has agreed the proposals that we have put forward. So it will be a continuation.
Do you think Chris Farfoy's heart has been in the job since he flagged last term that he wanted to leave?
Yes, I do. There's been a significant work program that he has led the charge on. Two areas in particular come to mind: broadcasting reform work, which he has held a particular passion for given his background in the sector, and his view that more needed to be done to reinforce the importance and bolster public broadcasting in New Zealand. And the second area of work has been the immigration reset. Now, it was a significant piece of work, made even more so by the period of our border closures and also the need to bring in skills and retain skills in New Zealand. He has done that. So now I think he's able to depart with a sense of closure that those two significant pieces of work, for the most part, have been delivered.
Chris Farfoy certainly had massive portfolios. He had a lot on his plate, and many would argue whether he, was simply burnt out. Do you run the risk of burning out Chris Hipkins by putting another big portfolio on his plate? No,
not at all. Two things here with Minister Hipkins. You'll see here that fundamentally the COVID-19 work has changed. We are now very much in a steady management of the pandemic, but it is not over. Minister Verrill has been the Associate Minister on COVID-19 and has done an exceptional job. She now picks up the totality of that portfolio, which will be a very smooth transition given the work she's already been doing, including on the variant plan. Also, Minister Hipkins has given a significant part of his education delegation to Minister Tinetti. Associate education, schools operation. So a lot of that day-to-day decision-making now sitting with a very experienced educationalist. That frees up Minister Hipkins to take on a new challenge, one that he's had a desire to step into, and where, interestingly, he has some background in.
Minister, why did Potter Williams lose her way on police?
So, as you would have heard me express today, I maintain my confidence in Minister Williams, and she maintains her place in Cabinet. What we have both agreed, though, is that the focus on the portfolio where it needs to be has been lost in recent times. And yet Minister Williams has presided over a significant increase in the police budget of 35%, an increase in police numbers by 15%. But our concern has been the need to focus on particularly ongoing legislative reform where it's needed to support the police is not necessarily where the focus is with the current narrative around the portfolio. We need to get back to those basics.
Saying is that Chris Hipkins, who has a better grasp of that legislative change if needed, will be the right person to bring back that focus?
It's fair to say that at the time that the portfolio was allocated to Minister Williams was a very different environment for the police. There was some controversy around some of the proposals around AOS, some concerns around their culture change program. Minister Williams, at that time in my mind, was the right fit. The focus has changed, and with it, we've changed the ministerial lineup. Joe.
It was a surprise to many when Potter Williams was given Police Minister. You put a lot of faith and confidence in her at the time, and people questioned it. Did you get it wrong?
Oh, did they? That's not something I particularly picked up. I stand by the decision that was taken at the time. The context was very different. And keep in mind, Minister Williams' background is in family and sexual violence. In her career, she had worked closely with the police in the work that she had done, and so had a good understanding of the operational pressures they face, but also the need to make sure that, as always, that community support for the police at a time as they were taking on some difficult issues was built, retained, and, as I say, grown. That was a tricky time for the police. There had been the AOS issues, and that hadn't necessarily been managed in a way that was building some community confidence. So that was the context then. The context now is vastly different. That culture change program continues to be important, but I have absolute faith in the ability of Minister Hipkins to continue it.
You spent about 6 minutes at the top reading through the list of changes. Do you think that it was dishonest of your office to describe today's reshuffle as minor?
No, because that is, well, look, I don't believe it was. But again, as I just answered prior, we've got 2 departures. The subsequent knock-on effect of those 2 departures does mean that you get some consequence as each portfolio moves through. But again, just to highlight, my concern was, of course, that some may have billed this as being a substantive reshuffle of the entire cabinet. It is not. We have, to be fair, in my mind, reshuffles involve new people coming into cabinet and people moving on in a reasonable number. We have 1 person leaving cabinet and 1 new minister. So that's what I consider to be the relatively minor element of it.
Minister Hipkins,
Yeah, Thomas.
Minister Hipkins is known to particularly love that education portfolio. Did you offer to take it off him completely, to unburden him for this new job, and did he ask to retain it?
For me, there's always that balance between ensuring that ministers can see through the completion of sometimes quite significant reform programs. So you'll know that in the polytech space and in the skills space, there's still a bit of bedding in around a significant reform agenda. So keeping his steady hand there is really helpful. But at the same time, some of that work program around curriculum, NCEA, professional teacher development, that's an area where increasingly Minister Tinetti had been playing a role. So she just expands into that role, and she has excellent experience in that regard.
Take it off him completely, to totally unburden him from that? Did you ever offer to lift it off his shoulders completely?
So I take a very consultative process. I often will have a view. I'll put it to a minister. We'll talk through what we believe is manageable. If I believe a minister's taking on too much, I will manage that.
The decision to give Kieran McAnulty Associate Local Government, was that to ease some of the pressure on Nanaia Mahuta and maybe to get farmers and more on board with the Three Waters?
Very simple explanation there. Minister Mahuta, it's very important to us that she continues on the Three Waters work. At the same time, with the borders reopening, we can anticipate that Minister Mahuta will also be travelling more. So really helpful to have someone else in a supporting role. She had no associates in local government. So that is just a very practical way that we can support a minister who has many draws on her time.
Do you think his rural background will be beneficial for the Three Waters reform?
Do I, sorry?
His rural background, do you think that will be beneficial?
I think generally the role that Kieran McAnulty will play as a minister will be important in our government because he has a lot to offer. I have a particular intention for him in the transport space to take up a regional focus. And of course, alongside national emergency management, where often you're dealing with infrastructure issues that affect often smaller councils with lower rating bases, I think this mix of portfolios will make a lot of sense.
So could you go through the reasons why you requested Mr. Whapoi stay on? Like what was going through your mind? Were you concerned that it was just a moment in time, or what was your reason?
No, I felt he still had something to offer, and he did, and he made that contribution over the course of this term. The reason I wanted to point that out was because I'm grateful that when he came to me that he was willing to stay on, because that did represent a sacrifice for him and his family, but he did that because he saw that there was an ongoing role for him to play as an experienced member in our team as we were transitioning into a second term. Chris is an extraordinary person. He brings a really important perspective to our cabinet. He's a colleague who has built relationships with everyone. He's worked across some really difficult portfolios, but he's always done it with good humour and having built strong relationships. So I'm grateful for the role he's played.
Conversation before the last election?
Yeah, it was around the time that he was making the decision around mana. Yeah, so you can see that obviously moving into the list. So.
He was thinking about going, you asked him to stay for a year.
I asked him to stay on, for up to a year or at least into the term rather than departing at the time of the election.
So one of the
Does Trevor
things
Mallard have the...
Come here. Go ahead.
Does Trevor Mallard have the temperament for a diplomatic posting?
Yes. Look, again, as I've said, the role of Speaker has always been a difficult one. There's not many people who would opt to be the referee for over 100 members of Parliament. It's always been a highly political job and a difficult one, and he particularly has had to manage through 5 years of, really difficult circumstances. But what's really interesting to also point out is the changes that he's made in Parliament to make it more family friendly, to give the opposition more opportunities and to hold the government to account. In my mind, he is well placed to take on a further role on behalf of New Zealand, as many other speakers have done.
If this is reforms that...
Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Thank you. One of the reforms that Minister Whapoi wasn't able to get done was hate speech, and those reforms which were an election promise. Is Kiritapu Island going to achieve that?
Is
Kiritapu Island?
Yes, well, it remains on the agenda, and it remains one of the recommendations, of course, and commitments as part of the Royal Commission work, but of course there's also wider community expectations around that piece of work. There will always be some things that aren't seen through to completion, and that will often be because you're undertaking the really important consultation work that's required for these changes. My hope continues to be that we'll build as much cross-party support for these changes as possible, because we do want to see them have longevity.
In the ground, though, those comments to say that you won't do it unless you get national...
No, not at all. But I do think that's all the way through. You will have heard me say that I wanted to see, as much as possible, some consensus built around these changes, because actually the intent and the need for them is we need consistency. We need to make sure that we don't simply have them implemented and then withdrawn. They're needed by our communities. The Royal Commission recommended them. It would be beneficial to all of us if we could see cross-party support. But no, it's not contingent on progression. Yeah.
Prime Minister, could you explain the reasons to move building construction away from Porter Williams, and are there any particular issues in that sector you're worried about?
It's very simple. It's not about the minister who's held the portfolio, it's about the minister who's going to hold it. So Megan Woods takes on the portfolio, and it means now that we have the minister who is in charge of the Crown building program also in charge of building and construction. One of the observations I've made is that Minister Woods is, of course, day-to-day seeing some of the issues within the market around building and construction. This gives her the opportunity to work with those agencies who have those responsibilities to try and troubleshoot those issues.
Because at the moment there is a GIB crisis.
Yes, there is.
To be a problem for lots
and
of
it affects our building program as much as it affects others. So I think Minister Woods is well placed to work on these issues.
Prime Minister,
Yeah,
is Paul
Jo.
Eagle doing a disservice to Rongotai and Wellington local government voters in not outlining his intentions to run for the Wellington Herald?
I think what I've outlined today is significant enough to comment. I have nothing to say on any other members of the caucus at this time.
About his intentions for the
Again,
Wellington
I
Herald?
have nothing to say currently on Paul or his future at this time. Thomas.
This is, given you've called this a minor reshuffle, how many people are you going to change in cabinet during your actual reshuffle?
Look, I think probably if I'd come out and said it was major, you'd then say it's only 2 people. Why did you call it major? I think it's probably possible to get slightly too hung up on the language. It's no easy way to describe this. There's 1 person leaving cabinet. So do I consider that to be major? No. Some people who have an interest in these portfolios may, though. So I guess it's open for interpretation. Our intention is to try and just keep it relevant to the proportion of what we think is changing.
I suppose if minor is two significant people moving on, then a normal size reshuffle might be sort of 4 or 5 next year.
I don't think you would expect me today to put a quantitative analysis around what different words will mean in relation to numbers of portfolios. I think the reason that I wanted to flag that, though, Thomas, is because for those who may assume that that's it to election time, that is not my intention, and that is simply what I wanted to flag today.
MPs, ministers signalled to you their intention to retire at the election? Yes?
Even if they had, that isn't something that I would publicly discuss until it was appropriate for them to announce it.
Opposition parties have run quite concerted campaigns to have Porter Williams removed as police minister. Does your decision today mean that they're a success?
No.
Is it disappointing, though, that your decision to give police to Porter Williams, who is not that hardline law and order stereotype, is it disappointing that punt didn't play out?
Again, what we need now in this police portfolio is not back and forth around political grandstanding and rhetoric. We need to acknowledge where we have issues, and we have gang tensions at the moment that are causing issues. We need to make sure the police have the tools that they need, and that is why we have the largest number of police officers on record and an increase in their resourcing. The third thing we need is to make sure that they have all the tools they need, and that's where we've specifically said to them, what more can we do to support you that will make a difference, not to the politics, but to the people. That's what we've sought in this portfolio. And Minister Williams and I sat down and had a conversation about whether or not we were able to focus on those issues clearly in the current environment, and both agreed that we couldn't, and so we've made these changes. Right, okay, I might finish up with Ben.
This is a bit speculative, but it's the last time we might get to speak to you before Matariki. So I just wondered how you planned on commemorating. Or what
No, you'll see me again.
Okay, right?
Yep.
You can answer now if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll go for it. How I'll plan on...
What personally you'll be doing for that?
Yeah, so I will have an opportunity to say a little bit more on this slightly closer to Matariki Week. But currently my intention at this stage is to be a part of some events that are being planned to mark the first Matariki, and they'll be in keeping with the traditions of Matariki. And they will be early in the morning. My hope, though, is that every New Zealander and their family will build their own traditions around Matariki. And this first opportunity and this first celebration is a chance to do that. Of course, many whānau have celebrated Matariki for many, many decades. This is a chance for New Zealand to do that as a nation. Thank you.
Just one more, Prime Minister. Are you ready for the public backlash to Trevor Mallard getting a plum job in Europe?
Well, that would assume you know what that is. Again, a role...
That many of the countries disagree
Look,
with ways
we've had 5 of our most recent speakers. Of our 5, we've had now 3 go on to represent New Zealand in various roles. That is not out of step with what we've seen in the past, and that's because of someone of over 3 decades experience in Parliament who've worked across multiple issues, have something to offer New Zealand, and so we're looking to make sure that that is best matched with a placement. I wouldn't make any assumptions about what that is until we can make some final announcements, but I consider it in keeping with what Trevor has to offer New Zealand. Thank you.